This video is on factorising a monic quadratic trinomial. So 3 big words there, monic, quadratic and trinomial. So I'm hoping you will remember exactly what those 3 words mean from a video, one of my previous videos. Quadratic just refers to the fact that the degree or the highest power of your algebraic expression must be 2. That means you must have an x squared term, and you can have terms that have a power less than x squared, but you cannot have a power higher than x squared. Monic means that the x squared term in your expression has to have a coefficient of 1. So it doesn't matter what the other terms look like, but this coefficient, for this particular video, we are only looking at quadratic trinomials that are monic, meaning we are only looking at quadratic trinomials where the x squared term has a number 1 in front of it. And a trinomial, the easiest to remember, just means that your expressions have 3 terms. So just like over here, we've got one term, second term, and a third term. That's a trinomial. So all the questions in this video are going to have that look. So let's just repeat that again. Degree is 2. It is monic, so you can see that there's no number in front of the x squared, meaning there's an imaginary 1. And finally, we have 3 terms. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So these are all monic quadratic trinomials. So how are we going to factorize them? My preferred way of factorizing quadratic trinomials is just to put everything straight away into your brackets, because we've just done a lot of expanding brackets, and so you should sort of already be able to guess what most of the factorization looks like. So for example, to get the x squared term, what we have at the beginning of our brackets, I call them the starters have to be x and x. And if your bracket has an a squared at the beginning, then your starters have to be a and a. And if your bracket has an m squared at the beginning, your starters have to be m and m. So you've already halfway filled in the answer, really. And if you've got a y squared term, then your starters will be y and y. Okay. Now the next thing I need you to understand is when we expand our brackets, to get the x term, that's this term here, it's a very important term, that x term is actually formed by multiplying this term and also this term together. So what I actually want is, and the other thing, sorry, let me go back a bit. The other thing that's worth noticing is that this 6 is obtained by multiplying the 2 constant terms in the bracket. So what I really want is I want 2 terms that will multiply to give 6 and add to give minus 5. So that's the key thing you should be focusing on. I want to multiply to give 6 and add to give minus 5. Now, when you try and think of 2 numbers that multiply to give 6, I would worry about the minus sign last. Okay, just think about 2 numbers that multiply to give 6, and straight away I can see that 3 and 2 multiply to give 6. I also know another possibility, which is 6 and 1. So we have to keep that in our minds as well. But that's all we've got. Okay. Now, if I want to get minus 5 when I add these terms, well, then I must need, if I think about it, if I've got 3 and 2, if I want to end up with minus 5 through adding, then I would have to have a minus and a minus, because minus 3 minus 2 gives me minus 5. If I put minus 3 but I make the 2 positive, that gives me minus 1. And if I make the 3 positive but the 2 negative, that gives me 1. And then if I make them both positive, I get 5, but I don't get minus 5. So you can see, really, there is only one combination. So once I work out the signs, which is the very last thing I do, I just add them in and I'm finished. So x multiplied by x, that now gives me my starters. That was obvious. Okay, then let's get this minus 5x term. The minus 5x term comes from doing the outside, that's minus 2x, and the insides, that's minus 3x. Oh, and minus 2x minus 3x is minus 5x. And then my very last thing to do would be to multiply the 2 constant terms. So that's the minus 3 times minus 2, and yes, that gives me plus 6. So really, I've done it. I've checked everything. Now, this method is not probably the most common method, but it will work really well as long as you do your check. If you do not do a check, get ready to make some mistakes. So be really careful of that when you're doing this method, you actually check what you're doing. So let's try it again. We need two numbers that multiply to give 28 and add to give minus 12. So it's very important you take the sign. So we want to multiply to give minus 28. Sorry, not 28, but minus 28. When negatives are there, we've got a lot of negatives in this example. I'd worry about the negatives last. Let's just think about 28. So 28, or I could do 7 and 4, but that's not going to give me 12, so that's out. What else could I do? I could do 28 and 1. That's going to get me nowhere near 12, so that's out. What else can I do with 28? I've done 7 and 4, 28 and 1. What about 14 and 2 I could do? Now that looks okay, because if I want to get minus 12, what I really need is I need a minus in front of the 14. I need a positive in front of the 12. And that's the hardest bit there. Once you've figured out those numbers, I'll put in the minus 14, I'll put in the plus 2. And then I can do a quick manual check. The manual check is massively important. You must do it every time, and it'll become very quick for you once you get this habit sorted in your head. So a times a, yep, that gives me a squared. Now we've got 2a minus 14a, and 2a minus 14a, yes, that is minus 12a. And then the last terms, minus 14 times plus 2, yes, that's definitely minus 28. So I've checked everything, okay? The biggest term you need to check is always this one here, okay? Once that works, the whole thing really will work. But it's just a good habit to get into. All right, let's try this one. We want two numbers that multiply to give minus 30 and add to give minus 1. Write that minus 1 in if you have to and it's not there. Now 30, we've got 10 and 3. That's not going to give me anywhere near 1. We've got 15 and 2. That's not going to get me anywhere near 1. I've got 6 and 5. Now you will know straight away when you come up with that right pair of numbers, because you'll see, oh, I can get 1 there, and if I can get 1, I can get minus 1. So the right pair will come. Some students say, oh, I've got to keep going, I'm going to keep trying. You, with a bit of experience, you get really fast at this. So I need a minus 6, I want to get negative 1, and I need a positive 5. If I did positive 6 and minus 5, that's going to give me positive 1, so that won't work. And if I do a double negative, that'll give me minus 11, so that won't work. So you've really got to think through your numbers. Okay. So minus 6 plus 5, yes, that's minus 1. So once you've done that, just put your numbers in the bracket. Minus 6 plus 5. I often get my students to do the quicker check, which is called an outside-inside check. And when you do your outside-inside check, you just draw those little brackets in there. And then you multiply the outside, so that's this bracket here. That gives me 5m. And then you multiply the inside bracket, that's minus 6m, and that is minus 1m. And that's the term you want to check, because we've already sorted out that m times m is m squared. And we've already sorted out that minus 6 and minus 5 give me minus 30. So really the only missing piece of the puzzle is this. So that's why I do my outside-inside check. All right, last one. We need two numbers that multiply to give 24 and add to give minus 11. Multiply to give 24 and add to give minus 11. I wonder if you already know the pair we want, because 24 and 1, that's not going to happen, because that won't give me 11. What else? 6 and 4 will give me 10 or 2, but they won't give me 11. Now what else have I got? 12 and 2, that gives me 14 and 10, so no, if I add and subtract. So the last pair I'm hoping you think of is 8 and 3. And to get minus 11, I need to put a minus 8 and a minus 3. So then I can write them straight into my bracket, because I can know that minus 8 minus 3 is minus 11. And then if you want, the quickest check you can do is my outside-inside check. So the outsides, this wider black bracket, well, that's y times minus 3, that's minus 3y. The insides is minus 8 times y, that's minus 8y, and that is in fact minus 11y. And the rest will be fine. All right, I've given you 4 to do yourself, because I think these are quite tricky, especially at first. So why don't you pause the video, give these a go, and then unpause and see if your answers are the same as mine. So now's the time to pause, and then unpause when you're done. All right, hopefully you'll manage these quite well. In terms of two numbers that multiply to give 18 and add to give minus 7, the two numbers are minus 9 and a plus 2. In terms of two numbers that multiply to give 10 and add to give 7, those two numbers will be 5 and 2. In terms of two numbers that multiply to give minus 20 and add to give minus 1, well, we know 5 fours will get me close to the 1. To get minus 1, I need a minus 5 and a plus 4. And in terms of two numbers that multiply to give 40 and add to give minus 13, that would be, now this one's an easy one to get tricked on, you really got to check it. It's going to be minus 8 and minus 5. I hope you managed to get all 4 of those questions correct. If not, maybe watch the video again or send me an email.